Good afternoon, everybody. It's Wednesday, the 8th of December. How did that happen? It's 12:30. It's time for HomeGames, episode number 74 of HomeGames, and the penultimate one of the season, I think, as they say in TV show parlance. I'm joined today, we're thrilled to be joined by CEO of Investment Quorum, the lovely Petronella West. If we could go live to Petronella, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. As usual, the doorbell's just rung, but fortunately somebody else went. The world of technology these days.
Is it one of the 6,000 pre-Christmas deliveries that I'm on the edge of my seat for right now as well?
Yeah, absolutely. But no, all good. Looking forward to
what part of the country are you in? We didn't talk about it in our little preamble.
Very urban Clapham Junction. Yeah, very close to the city, and I'm an urban girl. I like to get out in the weekends, but yeah, close to the city.
And are you getting battered by weather just now? By weather's happening.
I'm either under the ground travelling to the office or back here travelling from home. So at the moment, I haven't really noticed it. So I'm lucky because London doesn't get that battered by weather as much as others. But yeah, it's pretty. It's nice, brightish out there today.
Ah, lovely. Yeah, it's typical Scottish December outside where I'm here today, so it's a bit gloomy. But enough about me and my state of mind. Listen, thanks to there's loads of you filing in. You've no doubt filing in, watching Prime Minister saying the latest stuff. Not going to cover that today because is it an apology? Well, that would be a rift in the space-time continuum if that's happening. So fingers crossed. But yeah, thanks to everybody for tuning in. As per usual, we've got the live chat on the go on the right-hand side. I'll keep an eye out for that. If you've got any questions for Petronella, there's nothing off limits. I've been told we had a wee catch-up earlier in the week. Had quite a lively little discussion that we're going to touch on today. So I'll keep an eye out for that. Anything to do with financial planning, how to run a modern financial planning operation, there is nothing off limits. If you're feeling a wee bit shy and want to do it in the ask a question banner at the bottom, then please do so, and I'll keep an eye out for that. I've also been sent a couple of questions from people who couldn't tune in live, so I'll make sure I cover them because you will be watching on YouTube, no doubt, at some point in the future. So I think that's all the housekeeping done. Connections are fine, sound is fine, so don't need to talk too much about that. So we will get off and running. So Petronella, tell me about you, your firm, the origin story, the backstory, when it was set up, all those kind of things. Tell us, what on earth is an Investment Quorum when it's at home?
Well, I think as a lot of people will know, Investment Quorum founded in 2000, Lee Robertson and myself. And, that usual thing, one desk, two computers, living off KFC in the city, because that's all there was then. There was no Itsu and mung bean bars at that point. And I think the philosophy behind the foundation for the business has always been the customer. We could see in 2000 the writing being on the wall with commissions, and we felt that it was time to engage with clients in good long-term relationships, and that's kind of how it all started. Game changer for us was in 2006. We were joined by Peter Lohman, our chief investment officer, a sort of semi-retired fund manager. We lured him back and gradually carved out the Casanova inside him to replace him with IQ. And he helped us build a very good investment process that supported our client proposition. That was principally because by that point, we'd been through multiple platform graveyard of whatever. And we got a bit tired of other people telling us how to run our client money. And that was really the big change for us. And then we gradually grew, and sort of around 16, 17, Lee and I decided to pursue different things. Lee, as those of you who know Lee, is very involved in marketing and lots of other things, and sort of applying his not inconsiderable skill to other ventures. And we did a management buyout, brought in one external investor, our investor chairman, and basically continued to grow on that. And we haven't looked back. So 2018, we grew the firm from about 250 million to 400 million today. Depends on the markets, obviously. Doubled the staff now, so about 25. So we've got 6 client-facing advisors, and then 4 in the investment team. Really good client services that constantly needs sort of bolstering, and beginning to move into more marketing to grow the business. So we've been very, very fortunate through COVID. Really fortunate. Clients have needed us more than ever. We've kept really close to them and, kept them updated. We could move easily the staff between home and office. And it's going really, really well. So we're very, very fortunate. And it's great.
That's cool. Great. So we've got loads and loads to talk about today, and we could talk to you all day about how to run a modern financial advice practice and philosophies and all those kind of things. But I've got a number of different things that I want to touch on. Bit of Lancat background. Today's a bit of a momentous day for, like selfishly for me, because it's our biggest research exercise of the year, which we call State of the Advisor Nation, which is a big omnibus study talking about God knows how many things: regulation, platforms, technology, state of the sector, health of the sector, etc., etc., etc. But that goes off to the designer today, and that means I can stop thinking about it for at least 2 working days. Yeah. So yeah, thanks to everybody who's participated. But that's like a big phrase, isn't it? State of the Advisor Nation. How would you sum up, without me putting words in your mouth, from what our headlines and stuff that we're observing? How would you like describe the state of the advice profession today, and how does it compare to the origin of Quorum back in the early 2000s?
Well, I think it's also fair to note that I became a financial advisor when I was 19. 2 days training. It was about started mortgages, but I've watched massive regulation, and I made a decision that I love financial planning. I learned about it through my 20s. I kind of honed my skills in my 30s. Obviously we all had to take multiple more exams. I'm double chartered. I'm a pension transfer specialist. I've acquired all the exams and the skills that go with it. The saddest thing of all for me is when you talk about the state of the industry, is that it's very difficult for us. It's been very difficult for us to hire in the last 3 years. It's in fact even in the last 10. And the problem I get is that advisors, I don't think the caliber of advisors of the however many there are, 30,000, 31, 35, 32, whatever, going up, down, getting older, all the stats that are around there. But generally the quality of the advisors has been really hard to find. And every single one of the advisors in my firm are retrained in the last sort of 5 years, or they are recruits out of the graduate space. And we recruit specifically people who really believe that clients should be at the core of everything that we do, and that the client should come first. And I think the problem with the industry is that, we've gone through so many regulatory changes. And I kind of quote the phrase, I might have even got it from Lee, but we have the regulator the industry deserves. It's not the one I think my firm deserves. And there's some very good firms out there. Absolutely, there's some very good firms out there. And there's some really good ideas. But bringing it all together, fundamentally, I think the financial planning industry is still quite flawed. And I think there are a lot of advisors that just don't cut the mustard. I think clients continue to get really poor advice. And the British Steel Pension Scheme, as you know, I've got a bit of a bugbear about. How is it possible that in today's age that mess is continued to fester? And that mess affects all of us, from the FSCS levies that we all got this year. I'm paying double. So I paid £50,000 FSCS levy compared to 20 last year, or 25. And I'm bailing out the crap. And fundamentally, the regulator can be blamed if you like to, if that's what you want to do. But quite frankly, they're not there to be the gatekeeper of people not doing the right thing. They're there to stop when they find out. By the time they find out, it's all too late. So I think the great advisors that are coming through that truly believe, so the charter thing I think is important, but it doesn't mean anything to customers. They can give a toss. What they really care about is that you're going to put their needs first, and you're going to give them a great experience and a great outcome. And we need more of them that've got that right philosophy and culture inside them. And it's not quite there yet, but the new ones coming through, and I think those of us, who you are out there, if you're doing the right job or not. And I think the new ones are the ones that there is a really good future, but we've got to work a little bit harder at it. And I think consumers are not getting everything that they should get. And by the way, I'm not saying that it's right that it should be free or cheap. We train our advisors meticulously. I work really hard at my skills, to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. And I know everybody else is out there. So trying to offer that in a low cost environment just doesn't exist. Not financial planning, maybe investment opportunity. There's different offerings, passive, active. We're not here to debate that. We're here to debate the customer experience. They've got choice. So I'm not saying it should be cheap. You can still earn great money, but it's how those things could have come together. But there's a good possibility for the future. But right now, I still think it's really sore and sad.
It's a difficult one and obviously the caveat from my perspective is I'm not a practitioner. I'm not an advice professional. We've got a couple of people at the Lancat who have prior experience in that discipline, but there's a danger in so many walks of life to live in your own bubble. And some of the stuff I see in the press, some of the stuff I see around British Steel, around consumer duty recommendations, compared to what my experience is of interviewing firm after firm after firm after firm. I've had tons of them on here, on HomeGames, who all talk about being customer centric, being client centric, who all want to progress, who are diverse organisations. You know, are we collectively the good part of the sector, if that's how you want to phrase it? Are we existing in our own bubble, and how do we change that in aggregate? What is the path through this? Because I don't look at consumer duty and say, well, that's the answer. Bingo, we've finally got it. You know, like how does that? So if you're a fantastic firm and have no reason to believe that you're not, how does it resonate with you to read some of the language in things like consumer duty proposals, when it's things like you must place customers at the centre of your business? You've been doing this for years.
Well, you'd think, wouldn't you?
That was a very long-winded kind of sprawl, but you know what I mean. There's a real psychological side to this. I think if you're a good firm who is positioning themselves and doing this day in day out, like how do you work your way through that?
Well, well, look at the FSCS comment today. You know, actually, there's still loads of bad advice going on. I mean, I can't speak. I'm very fortunate. I've been in the industry a really long time, and I'm quite loud and noisy and quite opinionated. But I think it's with reasonably good foundations of knowledge. And the first bit of knowledge I've got is I've spent hours with clients, hours and hours and hours, understanding what they want and understanding what they need, what motivates them to make decisions about money, and all the jargony stuff. You know, that's not really what they care about. But some do, of course they do. We talked about this. Do clients need to know about asset allocation and volatility? Yes, some of them do, but not many. They just trust you to do a good job. And I think the issue really is around making sure that the regulator keeps doing this, because it keeps on fighting. I mean, if we've got this level of issues with the FSCS and FOS at the moment, then clearly something just isn't going right. And I don't think that you can't regulate for people to do the right thing. But FCA's operating principle all around integrity, you know. So I think what I've learned in the last 3 years is that I employ much younger people, much cleverer than I am, who kind of they're coming with a much cleaner not cleaner, that's not the right word, but a much raw, undiluted, unfiltered background. And what they're saying to them is, what do you think customers really want? And when you go and talk to a customer about what they really want, and you focus your business model about what does the customer want to see. So one of my other issues, for example, is we obviously send discretionary, we send reports. I would say that 80% of our clients don't like the format of the reports that we send. So I can go back to, and we work with Transact and 7IM, and I can go back to them and say, I don't like the format of this report. It's not what the client wants, but it's what we get, right? So instead of just saying, well, that's what we get, so if that's all we can have, then that's what we'll give to the client. But actually stop and say, well, hold on a minute, that's what we've got, right? But that's not what the customer wants. So find out what your customer wants and then give it to them. Now, we can't do everything, but technology has been a game changer. So, and APIs, and, I've been with, oh God, I'm probably going to really offend here people, Steve, but we've been with IntelliFlow, and, I said to them, I want data off IntelliFlow the way I want it. And they said, well, you can't. But we're going to put it in the cloud and you can pull it down. Well, I waited for a couple of years. I never got it. So in the end, I've got a brilliant chap. I'm not giving his name because someone's going to steal him. And I said to him, how would we deal with this? And he said, have you heard about this new fantastic operating system called Notion? And we built ours. And we built it in the way that we own the data, that as advisors, we own the client data, not a third party, not anybody else. We own it. And then we can digest and dissect the data, particularly with suitability and prod and all that stuff coming on, and build our own. Now, it takes a bit of time, but now we can give the customer through API technology the data from Notion, what they want, into an app that works for them. So if they want to know how much money they put in and how much money they've got out, and that's it, which funds did well, which funds didn't, that's there. They can have it exactly the way they want it. And this is the whole problem that I've faced, is that the industry has loads of technology and stuck in its own rut. You can have this software or that software, but none of that software does what my customer wants. It might do the Gabriel reporting and all the other bits. Client doesn't care. Client doesn't care. So I'm not saying that, so I think the technology, the fintech side of things is really exciting. The digitization of propositions, streamlining, getting things done quicker, your review meetings. We all know that takes time. It takes paperwork, and you've got to find a way to systemize and digitize it so that you spend more time with the client and less time kind of so that you can do more business. I mean, one of the things you talked about is scale. How do we scale up from 12 staff to 25 staff to 800 clients and still manage to give a top banana service? I'm not going to again say to the clients, you know, oh, sorry, you're too small now, I'm going to get rid of you. I've got to find a way to deal with them and look after them, but equally kind of attracting new business. It's for the more wealthy, and that's not fair. I get it. That I can't solve. That's a regulated problem. If you're going to make me do suitability reports and risk profiling and take 15 hours to onboard a client, I ain't going to do it for free. Not when I've trained as much as we've all trained.
See, one of the things that we observe is thinking about the theme of, right, let's put the customer at the center of all of this. So let's somehow bring regulation, asset management, platform developments, product developments, technology, and the advice profession all together. You certainly wouldn't get yourself to a state where you MiFID II 10% drop letters and notifications were developed, because they're routinely not used, not needed, not appropriate for the modern client-advisor relationship. There's a bit in our, this is a spoiler, but there's a bit in our latest report that people get in the new year around usage of AOV statements and reports for the asset management sector, so the assessment of value reports. And again, it's no surprise that virtually no one is using these extensively. Now, what kind of sector as a whole, so there's a collective responsibility here to varying degrees, would put in, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people hours and effort and expertise and intellect and collective experience in the sector to develop something that's not being used? I mean, that's a failing. That's a systemic failure of financial services as a whole, not of any one person. So it almost seems to me like the sector needs some form of mediation, you know, where you've got a huge disconnect between even the language used in regulation and what's going on at the coalface, between you ladies and gents actually deploying advice.
But there's also, yeah, sorry.
On you go, sorry.
No, but there's also, you see, end-to-end, so integration, I think that doesn't matter anymore because of API technology. So I would rather have the best financial planning software, the best cash flow, the best this, the best that. Now I can have that because everything will talk to each other, right? I don't have to have an end-to-end solution. I don't believe that's right, because I think there's best bits, there's great bits of technology. And I was chatting to a company, I better not say, but anyway, about their potential developments. And one of the things they said to me is they're looking at software that exists out in the world because they're very much bigger than we are. And what would that mean for us as advisors if they can bolt it onto platforms, in order that platforms can then giving what it is that they think we want. And so, but the other thing about all of this, of course, there's always got to be profitability in it. And I'm not afraid of profitability. I'm not afraid to make money. I'm not afraid to pay for what it is I want to pay for. It's not like cheap as chips. And this fee discussion, the cost, fee compression discussion that goes on is valid, right? It's valid, but it's only valid if you're not adding any value. So customers only get upset if they're not getting value. If they don't think they're getting value, they don't want to pay fees. I mean, that's normal. And so I think there's a sort of a fair price that, you know, there's a lot of probably dead wood that is expensive, that has to be paid for. And it's frightening to just rip it. It's frightening to just say, I'm not using any of the financial service, I'm going to just build my own thing. And we're a tiny company, but the people are there in the world that can do it for you, that are, as I said, unfettered. So I think there's a lot of profit margins that need to be met. And I mean, I remember reading the Professor K report on the ownership of UK equities that the government did, and he was very scathing about platforms. But he talked about all the little bits that everybody takes kind of along the way to make everything happen. And you sort of need to sort of streamline that so that, you know, whether it's trading or presenting or custody or advice or cash flow, obviously that needs to work in a way that's as efficiently optimized as possible, which is where I think technology will come in, because everyone will find a faster way to do things, and that hopefully then allows for the chains to be more cost effective, and therefore everyone able to. That's a utopia, because it's got to also live in the regulator. But the regulator does the job. I mean, MiFID II overall was pretty epic fail, and I understand what it was trying to do, but all it's done is make things much more complicated in the provider world and advisor world, and the customer's no better off. So there are always going to be problems along the way, but I still get back to the fact that that's our problem. And I think we do need to say, how can we, but is the regulator going to change if it's going to get thousands of complaints for people transferring out the British Steel Pension Scheme. We're talking 32 billion quid. And the FSCS turns around and says there's still really bad advice because we see all the files. So where do you give and take?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's, you pull one lever and it affects the other. It's just a classic problem that's no doubt replicated in other sectors.
But I think if we as planners at the end, right, because it's clear to me post robo and fee compression and COVID, that the financial planners of the world have a lot of power and a lot of sway with the clients, right? And everyone can come along, the Tilneys can come along and gobble everything up and what have you, and make them bigger and and of course financial planners will just eventually filter out of that, because I don't think I've seen that model work over the last 35 years unsuccessfully. But ultimately they'll have control of the assets for a bit until the advisors kind of rise up again and build relationship. And you need relationship, maybe not when you're 30, but you will need a relationship when your mum dies, your dad dies, you get cancer, or something terrible happens, and then you're like, oh my god, I've got to talk to someone. And computers will only go so far, the robot version. It'll happen. I'm not saying it won't. I'm not being naive. But the relationship's very strong for the planners. It's fair, and the opportunities right now are massive for us as a profession. So let's get more people into it and give over time. And if the front end is doing what it's meant to be doing, which is talking to the client, do the right thing, then the back end will follow, because we'll ask you for it.
Yeah. Listen, I want to hold that thought about getting more people into the profession. I'll just quickly go to Paul Miles. Hey, Paul, thanks for tuning in. Am I right in saying you only work with one platform? If so, that's a great advantage to other propositions. Is that true?
We work with two, Transact and Seven. I don't really want to be too critical on mine, but we think that we need to keep our foot in both camps, because I'm uncertain about the future of both. And the Seckles of this world that are launching, we're probably not ready for that yet. And the repapering and all the ultimately, we'd like to have custody and more control over custody and trading, because we are beholden to these platforms. If technology goes down, trades go wrong, we can't control it. But yes, our proposition is extremely streamlined, running 3 platforms. And when a new client onboards with us and they're on another platform, the only way you can get access to our services is to move those assets across. It might do it for no money. If it's big enough, we might absorb those costs ourselves. It's not worth us trying to trade as a discretionary manager on more than 2.
Grand. No, that makes perfect sense. I want to touch on, just because we're going to change topic in 5 minutes or so. I want to touch a little bit on, as everybody knows, there's been an evolution from, at fictitious point in time a number of years ago, between focus on product, focus on investment proposition, commission background, etc., etc. And there's been a gradual evolution to various degrees towards holistic financial planning, behavioral coaching, wellness, financial well-being, all those kind of things. At what point did you observe you as a firm were on that journey, or have you always taken those mindsets? What do you have any thoughts on what's going on in the sector from that perspective?
I think the thing about the sort of well-being of your client is all about there's a skill set to asking your clients the right questions about what do they need and what motivates them, what's their reality. But this is stuff you learn on the coaching side. There's lots of good guys out there doing it, Serenity, or, there's lots of firms that really subscribe to this. And you've got the sort of what I call the slightly extreme side of it from the George Kinder. I mean, there's like different versions of it and everybody can choose what they like. I think there's bits from all of it which are really valuable. So that when you sit down with your customer for the very first time, you're not sitting there going, you got £1 million, am I going to get those assets? There's a pension transfer, am I going to make 20 grand fees, whatever. You're really trying to think about, is the client right for us? And are we right for the client? And if we're not, then we break the conversation. We don't go to proposal until we know that relationship's right. You're only going to really know that if you can understand what the client wants. If their motivation is low cost, that it's like, well, you're not right for us. There are things out there you can do. So those questioning techniques we've always used as a means of the buy-in for the client. And it's also a great way to build rapport, because if you start the conversation about the money, then probably the client thinks it's all about the money, whereas you start the conversation about them. So but I think it's a skill that we teach our advisors. So we're doing a lot of work over 21, 22 and 23 about questioning techniques, that's time well spent. But yes, I think if we start with that conversation in a different way, and more advisors are trained that way. So the CII is great, right? For the Chartered Financial Plan, it's great, but it's very technical. There's not a lot less about soft skills. And this the old Institute of Financial Planning type, building cash flows, also great. But the combination of that with things like the wellbeing initiative is great, because that's more about the sort of warming the client up. So it's a combination of all of that.
So you have to, So in order for that to work on an ongoing basis with your client bank across the firm, whether it's a one-to-one relationship with you as an advisor or whether it's a team that is deployed, there must be a capacity. I'm not going to put you in the spot and get you to guess what this number is, right? But there must be there's a capacity crunch within the firm, the volume of people that you can possibly, for want of a better word, care about in any given time and do your best on behalf of them. And that's somewhere between, I don't know, 50 to 10,000. I don't know what that number is, but when we talk about advice gap and getting more people into the profession and all those kind of things, has the evolution to this, behavioral wellness aspect made it harder in a sense, because you're having to have those personal relationships and deploy a different set of skills? Or is that an unfair question?
Well, I think it used to be a bit like that, but that's not how we're going to make it work. So I'm a big fan of Grey's Anatomy, and in Grey's Anatomy, you've got the attendees, the residents, and the interns, right? And everybody's learning. They're all surgeons, right? But they get more specialized surgeons as they go up. And you don't necessarily need the surgeon there, the top surgeon, the attendee there all the time. The resident can do the work, or the intern can do the work. So you can work with your clients as a team-based approach and spread the work out. So not just one person is doing one thing. And that's why we run in 3 separate teams. My advisors don't get involved. They're very involved in the investment process for our discretionary business, but the investment team do all that for them, right? So they don't have to meet fund managers and decide whether we're going to buy Fundsmith or, I don't know, Scottish Mortgage Investment or whatever it is. The point is they don't get involved in that. They know that it's a high quality because the interns and the graduates there are working on that part of it. Our client services do all that. And our client services, we upskill them to do carry forward and not to do pension transfers, but there's lots of technical stuff, funding ISAs, CGT work and that kind of thing. Upskill your support staff. So your advisor can just work on those bits, which is what they really need to be working on. And that's a different type of person. All needs different types of personality. So I think and when people talk about not diluting the strength in larger numbers, it's because your advisors, you can't trust them at the front end to do the right job in the first place. So you need heavier compliance, so you need heavier this, file checks, Whereas actually, if the culture of the firm at the top, streaming down, is we do it right in the first place, then you can scale. I think the problem at the moment, there isn't enough advisors, good enough qualified advisors in the industry for the big firms to use. But you've got big law firms and you've got big accountancy firms, and we're just like that. A partnership, one that allows, longevity as well. So I'm conscious of time, but, longevity, that businesses, I'm going to hand my stake down over a period of time. It's what Chris Budd talks about the employee ownership. Find a way that you've got all these big advisors with equity in these big firms. Of course, they want a big cash out. But maybe if we just do it a slightly longer way, then we can start to breed future owners of businesses. And then, like lawyers and accountants, work like partnerships. Better future, I think. And the customer then knows they've got longevity in the business. The biggest reason we win in big investment mandates at the moment, they go, I don't know whether I'm with Smith & Williamson or this firm or that firm or Charles Stanley. I've been sold. I'm Raymond James. And the clients are like, do you know what? I'm done. I'll come to you, independent and small. It's a good winner for us, but it doesn't help the customer.
Yeah. Listen, here's a seamless link to the end of this wee section, Petronella. Paul's asked another question. I promise this question wasn't placed. It wasn't the...
It's just me and Paul.
Paul's got 100 people around his house, socially distanced, obviously. Before you change route, Steve, there's John Delaney saying, sorry I'm late, I slept in. It's fine, John. It's also on YouTube, so you can get the start of it. It'll be on YouTube tonight or tomorrow. So Paul, am I right in saying, I've read that one out already. Before you change route, Steve, could I ask what the route is from graduate to financial planner over, say, 5 years? That's a great question. What's the path to getting new blood in to competence?
So our plan is, we hire them as associate wealth managers. That's what title we give them. Financial planners, financial advisors, just what we choose. We believe we work in wealth management. That's both investment and planning. So we take them on as associate wealth managers. We give them 1 year to do RO1 to 6. We need a benchmark. They're not great, but they're a good start. And they shadow a qualified advisor. So they immediately get involved in working with either myself or Nick or Melissa or George Steger. And they do cash flows, and they're working with us, all the meetings. They're doing all the follow-ups, pre-meeting, post-review meeting, And then they have to take exams every quarter, and we could put them on a salary trajectory. I won't discuss that, but on an increasing salary each quarter past the exams. Then they get to the end of year one. And then they've got 1 year of what we call, what I don't know what they were called now, but we call it, it's the old competent advisor status. So we might get them authorized. Obviously, that's not an FCA thing now. That's a board decision. If we feel they've upskilled enough to be able to handle a basic fact find, present report. We've gone through all that phase. A lot of role plays. We do a lot of coaching and role plays. And then we start to do more around sales skills, training and fact finding, questioning, whether it's around the initiative of wellbeing, whatever. And then over the following year, that will give them to the end of year 2. Then we think they probably got enough experience to be able to sit through review meetings and take some of the heavy lifting away. Meanwhile, they're working all towards chartered status. We're going with the chartered financial planner status because we're chartered as a firm. It's a bit of a mess that I don't want to get into that, but the point is we'd like to have the chartered accreditation, so we need everyone to get to chartered. And then it's just see as they go. I think over 5 years, they'll gradually start to develop client relationships. And we like our advisors to network in the professional market. We like to network with clients and like to be able to do planning. But they've all got slightly different skill sets. Some are more hunter-driven and a bit alpha male, and some of them are more like, happy to sort of sit more in the background. And you are just horses for courses. There's lots of different personality types, but we have a clear now graduate scheme, even for a tiny firm.
Nice one. That's a brilliant answer. Thanks for asking that, Paul. Another sector question snuck in from Mr. Tom McPhail. So we'll very quickly cover this, and then I want to talk about other stuff. Petronella, do you advise on housing equity release, etc.? And if so, how do you build that into your client asset platform data, etc., and all of your other processes?
We don't. We've stepped back from that at the moment. I think it's really highly specialised. Get a lot of calls about it. I think we've got enough working knowledge. I think it's going to become a bigger issue if we don't resolve it through any of the parliamentary legislation, whatever. At the moment, we've decided not to, but that isn't necessarily an area we might go into. But we can advise clients, parents, and things when we get to those situations on the peripherals, but not choosing to execute at the moment.
Nice one. Thanks very much for that.
For clients, poor deals for equity release for clients.
Cool. Right. Thanks very much. Quick follow-up. Why not? You've answered that. Right. If we were on Graham Norton, right? Heaven forbid.
Well, then this would be wine. This would be white wine if it was there.
Honestly, this is gin. It's not. No, this would be the time to plug some stuff. Everybody goes on to plug a movie or a book, but I think that really interests me about you is the charity stuff that you do. And you've got something on the go at the moment, but also the financial education stuff. And I've got a question about that from someone who couldn't attend live. So, something you said to me the other day when we were having a recatch up was, I think you said if you could have a second life or third life, this is what you would focus on. So, tell it, what is it that makes you tick outside of financial services?
Well, I've got kids, and they just like to spend money. Well, no, actually, that's not true. I've kind of educated, but our legacy business. So our clients, I don't mean legacy business in the sense of an old book. I mean that we talk to clients a lot about legacy planning. So our clients have children. I mean, I'm 53. I started when I was 18, 19, and my clients have grown up with me, so their children have grown up, and they don't have financial literacy. So that's kind of where the thing started. Was we started talking to our clients' children. And I think I've got a sort of aptitude to kind of relating to teenagers. And so my kids are at private school. So I went to go and said, do you want to do some life skills stuff? And I gradually built with some help from externals a money matters course for them. And over it's one of the life skills within schools. And I talk to them about what's a bank. And I talk about the Stanford marshmallow thing about instant gratification, hitting the pause button, peer pressure, spending money. And then just simple things like, what if you save a bit? What if you spend less? And what if you earn more? And, how you get to targets. And then if they're, depending on the school, we can talk a bit about what's a bank, what's a building society, how do you save? But now it's about Revolut and Monzo and Starling and Tide and all the other stuff. And so you've got to kind of keep up with it. But fundamentally, it's still the same principles. And I think it's shocking that people can come and work for me as graduates and not even understand percentages, let alone understand what interest you get in a bank. And the importance of investing and long-term and inflation. And some of that gets covered in A-levels at business and all that, but not that practical stuff. So we introduce like a mini budget for university, and it's hilarious. How much is your rent going to be? And people just say, well, mummy's going to pay the rent, or the loan's going to pay the rent, and then it's like, so no concern, that loan, right? So that £60,000 student finance you're going to get rolling up at 6%, 7% interest, what's that going to mean for you? And suddenly it's like thinking about it in a different way. And it proved to be very popular. And I also do it for kids, which I really like, is doing it for kids in pupil referral units who've been working with a charity, Future Skills, at the moment, to help kids who've been excluded from school, give them a bit of money. And sometimes that's just a simple thing of a budget to go to Asda for food shopping for a week. What do sausages cost and a loaf of bread? But it's the same principle all along. And if I had my choice, I'd like to work with, I'm not sure this government, but a way that encourages schools to teach this in life skills. It's things like, I think it's more valuable. There's lots of things that are very valuable that the state school system can't cover. But I think having a proper course about money, and there's lots of good stuff out there on the internet, brilliant, but it's not actually being taught in schools in terms of practical. And then as a business, it's fabulous because we take all those skills and we go and talk to our clients' children, which is our future winners. And those of you all know that, in financial services, if you deal with the dad and the dad dies, then invariably the wife, the wife will come along, and you've got about a 50% chance of keeping the assets. And if the wife doesn't stay with you, the kid's about a 90% chance they're going to go off and run away. So we talk about family legacies and being beneficiaries of the income, not the capital. And that's great for business. So it kind of transferred all the way through. But I feel really passionately that kids should get a better education at school. Really, it's terrible. They don't know anything. We can't equip them for the world.
Do you think, see if this was Jen, right? If I wasn't joking, I'd be getting on my high horse now, talking about a kind of weird ingrained attitude we have towards numeracy in life. Whether this is across the globe, I don't know, but certainly in the UK, it's almost funny. Not funny's not the right word, but it's socially acceptable to say, I'm not good with numbers. I can't do numbers. Whereas you wouldn't get the same attitude towards literacy. You wouldn't say, I can't read. There's the degree of shame, rightly or wrongly, towards things like literacy doesn't apply to numeracy. And then if I was on my second one of these, I'd be talking about social media platforms giving false equivalency to people who can't interpret data.
Well, just fundamentally crypto, but let's not go there. But I do think,
but COVID and scaremongering and vaccination and stuff.
What 25% of something is, then just put 4 apples in someone's hands and take one away. There are ways to do this to make kids understand. You just have to talk to them in a different way, in a language that they understand. But you've got to start with the basics. It's not, I'm going to teach you what 15% of 100 is. I'm going to teach you how important it is about that you save for the future, about gratitude. Those are more important lessons about money. And that's not just about numeracy. That's just about being sensible. Common sense, the one thing that isn't common. So I think I'd love to work on that kind of stuff if I do get bored at IQ, but I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
There's a big question here. I don't know if you feel the same as me about this, Petronella, but part of the reason why I've got my Samaritans t-shirt on, as I often do when I'm doing home games. So I had my Christmas jumper last week, but it was too hot, so I'm not doing that ever again. Part of the reason why I do the mental health stuff, I think, is because there's some kind of weird latent feeling of guilt at the back of my mind that I'm working in a sector that, and I said this to Rohan last week on HomeGames, that on a negative day, if I'm not in the best state of mind, I can think, oh God, are we just catering for the top 4 or 5% of people in the UK who would do okay anyway in life if we were to be all doing something else? And I guess that's why I do this. So is there an element in your mind where the literacy, it's the educating children, is that a legacy thing for you? Is it an altruistic thing to try and improve society? How does that relate to what you do on a day-to-day basis? That's a big question, eh?
It is, but I think that it's something I feel really passionate about and I'm good at. Right, I'm really good at it. I didn't get here after 35 years. It's the one thing I'm bad at lots of things, but I'm really good at this, and I can talk to teenagers, and I really love it. So there's a passion. I mean, the kind of doing stuff for the rest of the world. I mean, as you said, I'm going back out to Sierra Leone. I didn't actually ever want to go there in the first place, but when I went there for the first time, I got Africa, and it's in my blood. And And as somebody once said to me, well, the infrastructure and corruption, all this kind of stuff. And my mother was like reading and bless her, when she was alive, reading the Daily Mail going, yes, but they're stealing all the money. And I'm like, no, because the charity works well to make sure it doesn't go to the government. It goes to where it goes. And all we're trying to do is give kids who go to get them into school, give them a bit of hope, because they love to go to school. They'll walk 6 miles to school on one leg to go, and I'm not joking, to go to school. And girls will love to learn to read so that they don't have to go to what our version of prostitution, their version of survival. So it's a combination of both of those things. So, I mean, in that very old sort of 50s, 60s model of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we are getting to, kind of like that sort of self-actualization, but people are getting there sooner. They want more. They want to help people more. I find my team really want to help people. They're giving blood. They're feeding the home. They're doing all sorts of amazing stuff on our 12 Days of Christmas appeal. And the appetite is really fantastic because people need purpose. So I think the charity thing for me, I just get Africa. I love Sierra Leone. I've got loads of friends out there. It's hard. It's gritty, but it's an amazing privilege. And then you can kind of take some of that from sort of the kids who have nothing and are illiterate, not numerate, anything, to the sort of hard done kids in London to privileged kids. And it's kind of the whole gamut, really. It's about education. It's about helping people get one step further in life, get a better job, stack shelves, go to management. It's like give people an opportunity to move up.
Lovely. What a lovely positive note to end on. We've bust we're just over the 40-minute mark, so we'll end on a really positive note. That was wonderful. So lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
In HomeGames, lovely to come on. Thanks to everybody for tuning in.
Is there anyone out there?
I know we've got loads more people on there, honestly, and we can let's wave to people in YouTube in the future. Maybe you're watching this in 10 years' time and all this is over, COVID's over, and it's a brave new world and all that. But listen, it's so lovely to have you on. You're our last external guest of the year. But HomeGames doesn't end. We're on next week. We're doing a bit of roundup best bits to round off the year with, I think, myself and Mark. If we could get Mark posting out his sick bed, get well soon, boss. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in, and see you later. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.